Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Absolute Football Podcast, absolutely non-league show. The show dedicated to everything from the National League North, and National League South. And as always, we are in collaboration with a fantastic NLFullTime. A little bit different to our usual shows. It is another season review. We do have the expert that everybody knows which league we are talking about. It is the National League North. Dickie, you're representing NLFullTime tonight. How are you, and how's your bank holiday weekend been?
Yeah, I'm okay, thank you. I'm sat out in the garden making the most of the fact that it's a lovely evening, plus the fact it's unbearably warm upstairs. So, if I'm sweating, it's not because I don't necessarily know what I'm talking about, although we may find that out during the course of the evening.
Morgan, how are you, and how's your bank holiday weekend been? I mean, the first thing you asked me, to be fair off air, was, have you melted yet? Which I haven't. Have you melted yet?
I'm pretty close. I think half of me sweated off. I feel like I've lost, I don't know, weight or something because of how much I've sweated because of this heat. It's been horrible. I've had a really good time. I had a barbecue at my sister's the other day, so that was really nice. But yeah, just trying to drink as much water and survive this heat at the moment.
I love that. And of course, we have some fantastic people in the chat. Somebody will be really happy to know we are covering the North. We have Spenny fan Chris. Good evening, all. Good evening, Chris. Hope you're okay. And if anybody does support a National League North side as well, we are doing it from 24 all the way up to 1. So please feel free to have your say on your team and just give us a few sentences or a few words on how you think your season went. We're more than happy to join in. We've got Graham as well. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Graham. Hope you're okay. We have got as well Matt. He has put, good evening, Shah, Morgan and Rich. Hope you've had a great bank holiday. Yeah, thank you. Hope you have too. And we do have Charxrafc as well. So thank you so much for coming in, everybody. And of course, just a few rules. So as I did mention, we are going from the bottom to the top, 24 to first. And Sam, bless him, he has been doing all the graphics behind the scenes for all of the season reviews. So there may be a chance, there could be a mistake here and there because there's just so much to do. So apologies if that happens. And we know there has been managerial roller coasters, the managerial merry-go-round, but it has done it same as last week where the manager who ended the season is on the graphic, just to point that out. But we will get down to it very, very soon, just really quickly as well in the chat. Being in Blackpool this weekend, I look like a drumstick lolly. Remember to put your sun cream on, everyone. Remember to put your sun cream on. Graham as well has put, still 28 degrees here in my living room. Sleep will be fun tonight. Do you have a fan? If you have a fan, definitely put your fan on. And yes, claps for Sammy. He's done a fantastic job with the graphics. But without any further ado, we will get to it. So we do have at the bottom in 24th position, Leamington. Who wants to start with Leamington?
I can
do. Go on, Morgan.
I was going to say, it's kind of been coming for them. They've always been one of the smallest teams in National League North. There are some teams that obviously you look at and think, would they look out of place in National League or League Two? Leamington have always been one of the smallest clubs at the other end of the table. And I know I just checked my predictions. I had them 20th because it seems like every year for the last few, they've been good enough to just stay up, but it feels like they had been circling a plug hole. I think for the last decade, they dropped to the 7th tier once and bounced straight back up. So they're not out of place falling back into the 7th tier. They are one of the small teams, and it just feels like it was kind of a matter of time for them. They did the best, obviously being in the 6th tier for as long as they had. They don't get massive crowds as well. So it was always going to be a struggle for them, but hopefully it should give them a chance to kind of rebuild, because when you look at their points total compared to the teams that like finished 20th and just stayed up, or even some of the teams that went down with them, they were quite far adrift and had gone quite early in the season.
Yeah, it's going to be a big rebuild for them, because I think we know that, well, manager Paul Holleran left, I think it was New Year's Day, potentially. I think he stepped aside. Chris Knott came in. He's subsequently moved on, and Scott Easterlow has come in from Racing Club Warwick. Funnily enough, Chris Knott is now the manager of Racing Club Warwick, so they've got a mid-season or towards the end of the season swap there. But I think there's several players who are stepping away from Leamington. Theo Street's retiring. Adam Walker has moved to Racing Club Warwick. So Scott Easterlow is going to have to work his contacts really, really well to rebuild the team. But he gets a chance to do it in his own image, really. I think Paul Holleran, I mean, he's been such a big factor for Leamington. He is Leamington, or has been for the last 10, 12, however many years. And I think the big thing for this season was, I think defensively they were still okay. But I think going forward, that was where the problems were. I think in previous seasons, they've always managed to find a goal scorer. They found Callum Stewart when they were down at step 3, and they got them promoted to step 2. And he had a great first half of the season, got himself a move to Shrewsbury. They couldn't find one this summer. And I mean, the fact that Max Brogan there is top scorer, and Max came in with probably about 2 or 3 months of the season left to go, and is a midfielder and still managed to finish top scorer, tells you really where the significant issue has been.
Definitely. As we go on as well, we kind of see, as we noticed last week with the National League South, you see an ongoing pattern, and there's goal scorers who really do stand out in the double digits. But like you said as well there, Dickie, Max Brogan obviously came towards the end of the season, and midfielder, did absolutely brilliant for them, but still 7 goals. It's just not quite enough, has it? And that has been the problem, obviously, of the season going forward. Unfortunately.
You're not going to stay up. When you look at it, 24 goals at home, 17 away, that's 41 goals in total. In a 46-game season, you can't stay up scoring less than a goal a game. It's not possible. No,
definitely. That made me laugh with Luke. No 0-0s here. Sorry, Luke. It's National League North season review. We'll pretend for you, though. We'll pretend. So, 23rd position, we do have Peterborough Sports. So, Dickie, I will come to you next. Peterborough Sports.
Yeah, I think... I didn't think Peterborough Sports would pull up any trees, but similarly, I wasn't sure that I saw them going down. But they had a poor start. I know it was after a 3-2 defeat at Telford in September that they decided to make a change, and Michael Gash stepped back from the management role. So did Luke Steele. Gash stayed on as a player, and Phil Brown came in. And they did have a little bit of an upturn under Phil Brown, but then towards the end of the season, when results still weren't coming regularly enough to get them away from the bottom decisively, they went back to Michael Gash again, and I suppose it was going with somebody that they knew and perhaps the players could relate to. But yeah, goal scoring's been a bit of an issue for them there. I mean, Luca Miller with 13, but I think I'm struggling to think who else really found the target with any regularity for them. And again, they are a small budget side in that division. They're a little bit out on the limb in terms of recruitment as well. So, bringing players in. I mean, I think when Telford played them about 2-3 weeks from the end of the season, I think there were 3 players in their side who'd been in the Kettering side that had been at step 3 the last season. So they'd done some of their summer recruitment from step 3. And that's not to say those players can't necessarily be step 2 players, but they probably needed a bit more around them to help them make that transition. And yeah, it's just all kind of fell away quite sadly towards the end. And of course, they had that absolute shellacking against Worksop where they lost 8-0. Although they showed a little bit of pride on that final day when they almost upset the apple cart for Hereford, who we'll come to shortly.
Yeah, definitely. Morgan, do you have anything to add on Peterborough Sports?
Yeah, it's just my notes. Just again, they are one of the smallest teams in the league, and you said like Phil Brown had a little bit more of a revival. I know they were flirting with about 20th at a point. It's like, cool, they have made a bit of a fight out of this. But I was scrolling through their fixtures, and when Phil Brown left at the end of he became director of football again in February, and he stepped back. They got 1 win in the last 18 games from the end of January to the end of the season. It just completely fell apart once Phil Brown took that step back and went upstairs again. And obviously, they had that 8-0 hammering against Worktop that was kind of the cherry on top of the cake, really, in terms of bad results. But one win in your last 18 from the end of the season, they just gave themselves no chance after they did have a bit of a fighting chance through the middle of the season. At that point, just completely fell apart.
Definitely. Another team that we will get onto. 22nd, Alfreton Town. I'm going to come to you first, Morgan. What's your thoughts on Alfreton Town? And yet again, looking at the top goal scorer, there's a bit of a consistent theme going on, isn't there? Unfortunately, with the teams at the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, they've been at National League North level for 10 years now. They fell into the National League North from the National League in 2015-16. 2 years ago, they finished 5th. Last year, they finished 14th. And they had Billy Heath in charge for so long. And I know as a York fan, we went there. And every time we went there, it was a horrible place to go. The pitch was awful. They played this ugly football, but it's really effective. The fact they got 5th 2 years ago is a massive example of that. They could be a horrible place to go, a horrible team to play against. Apologies if you can hear everything in the background. But they were always a horrible team to play against, and they had that. And then Billy Heath left in, when was it? It was partway through the season. I want to say it was October-ish, but he'd been there since 2018. Billy Heath left. Jake Buxton came in, and they just seemed to lose that identity. That just had been going in. It's fourth and race from 5th to 14th, them getting relegated without that identity that Billy Heath had for them for so long.
Yeah, I think you read my mind there with that word identity. I mean, it might not have been to everybody's taste the way that Billy Heath set his sides up, but it was hugely effective. Teams didn't like playing against it. Now, whether it's down to the new ownership that came in that wanted something different and that he perhaps they could see the signs that he wasn't going to be able to adapt to that, or I'm not entirely sure, but obviously they made the change. Jake Buxton came in. I think they were perhaps hoping to use some of his contacts through having been in the coaching in Derby's youth setup. But again, I think recruitment was probably a bit of a problem for Alfreton. As you say, when your top scorer's got 7, you are giving yourself a problem. And we'll never know, but perhaps if they'd retained a little bit more of that ugliness that they had under Billy Heath, then maybe they might have got out of that. You'd almost see that being the kind of situation over the last few weeks of the season that a Billy Heath side would have really kind of relished. And they did have a good go at it, to be fair. They almost got out of trouble. But again, they were left with a bit of a fixture backlog and probably just a combination of too many negative factors in the end did for them.
No, definitely. I was going to add as well to that, and that's completely right, because there were times on this podcast where we thought, oh, are they going to get something now? Are they going to just get out of it? And as much as we were saying that and they were picking up the points, they were just so inconsistent, weren't they? And just couldn't manage to obviously get over that final push. We do have a lot about them in the chat, though, which I will just bring up. Matt has put, don't know if you've heard, but Alfreton's owner looks to have put them up for sale.
He's only been there for a year, I think. I think he came in last year, and obviously they've been relegated and trying to sell them again. It's not a good look, though.
Yeah, I saw him. I didn't meet him to speak to, but I saw him at Telford probably about March time, and you would struggle to know that he was the owner of a football club, and that's not mean, you can. I'm not saying you should have a certain look or feel about you or whatever, but he kind of walked in with his backpack on his back and everything. You're kind of thinking, this is a very unconventional football club owner. And the idea to try and raise money, get money into the football club through sort of crypto tokens or whatever it was that he was kind of slating or putting forward. I don't think that was ever something that the public in Alfreton are ever going to be able to get behind. I think it was just, he might have some interesting ideas, but I think he certainly picked the wrong club in Alfreton to try and make those work.
Yeah, it's a smallish working class, I think, former mining town in North Derbyshire. It's not the type of place where cryptocurrency is going to latch on. It's wrong club, wrong time, wrong place. It's not. It's the recipe for disaster, to be completely honest.
Yeah, Lucas put as well, took them over, got them relegated, and had a meltdown about that he couldn't make a profit and he wants to sell the club. That is what Luke's put. We have got here as well from Chris. Geez, Alfreton from the playoffs and now relegated. Been there too often and in the nicest possible way. I'm so glad not to go there again. And now the Alfreton new owner has already wanted to sell up. And we have got as well, Luke has put, imagine having a free draw at the end of the season and both sides manage to go down. I know. And we are going to come on to now. I'm going to come to you first, Dickie. So we do have, obviously, in 21st, Curzon Ashton. Thoughts on Curzon Ashton and their season?
Yeah, I mean, they were the team that had that 3-3 draw with Alfreton, and they've both ended up. I think it was goal difference, wasn't it? The pair of them, that went down on, and which I'll come to mention in a moment. I mean, Curzon Ashton have punched above their weight at this level for so often. I think it was 11 years that we were almost lulled into well, Curzon Ashton will be fine. They'll just do what they always do, and they'll punch above their weight, and they'll probably be comfortably in mid-table, if not a little bit higher. And for the first part of the season, that's kind of how it was looking. I think they were not that far off the playoff places at the turn of the year. But then, the slide started. I know my own side, Telford, went there and won 8-0 in January. And at the time, you just think, that's so un-Curzon-like. That can't be, that's just a really bad day at the office. We've had a good day at the office. They'll write that off. They'll put that one in the drawer and leave it, and they'll recover. But they didn't, and they didn't seem to bounce back from that. And then the longer and longer they went, and the more you could see them, they were dropping a place or two every week until it kind of became inevitable. I mean, I don't know whether the budget was slightly smaller at Curzon this season. I suspect it may have been. I mean, Tony Weston did contribute, 17 there, which isn't bad at all. But I think it was the goals against column that's the big one for them. I think it's, 88, I think we're adding up there. And yes, allowing for one, crazy afternoon where they conceded 8. There's still 80 goals against in 45 games. Just too many. They had Marcus Pocher injured, who I think they missed for quite a lot of the season. And they didn't ever really seem to make any moves to try and recruit or strengthen what they got. And it just sort of became an inexorable slide towards the relegation zone, which, unfortunately, on the final day, I'm not sure that they were in the bottom 4 until the last day of the season. But, that's literally the last day you want to be there, isn't it? I think they've got the potential to bounce back. Certainly, I think we could see them as a set 2 side again. But out of all the teams that went down, they were the most unexpected for me. Having been pushing for playoffs in the last year or two, it was a real surprise.
Definitely. I feel like as well with Curzon Ashton, I associate them with a team that were very hard to beat. Like, they're one of them teams that they are very hard to beat, aren't they? So I was quite shocked with the fact how their defence kind of collapsed this season and the goals they were leaking, because I've always had them down, and just watching them like the season before and stuff, they are one of them teams who kind of went under the radar a few times. Morgan, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on Curzon Ashton.
Yeah, I think things have just caught up to them a little bit. They finished 7th in 23-24, made the playoffs. Last year they finished 8th, just missed out on the playoffs. And they are, again, as you said, they're punching above their weight. I think their average crowd is about 400, which is the second smallest in the league. I think only Peterborough Sports had a worse or lower average attendance. And it just seemed to catch up to them. I mean, you look at the away form, it's better than the home form. They scored more, they conceded less, lost 4 less games, drew 5 more, and only won 1 less. So their away form was so much better. And I think things just caught up to them. And one of the things they've done really, really well in recent years is their managerial appointments. Craig Mahon did really well there, got himself a better job. Adam Lakeland did a really good job there, got himself a better job. Then both going to be National League managers. Oh no, sorry, Lakeland's just dropped down to go to Morecambe, but one was at Halifax last season, did well. One was at Fylde, won National League North. Those 2 managers were both products of Curzon Ashton, and with where they are, they do have the benefit of being in such a recruitment hotbed. Because they're so near Manchester, they can take players from all the clubs in and around Manchester, whether that's loans from the big clubs in Man City, Man United, whether that's some of the smaller ones like Rochdale and Oldham that are National League 2 clubs rather than Premier League giants. They've got that to lean upon, and the managerial appointments have always been the last 2 have been spot on, but this year's just kind of fallen away from them. You'd expect them to be one of the favourites next year, but in terms of the size of the stadium, the crowds they get in, and what's gone wrong this year in terms of goals conceded, it's a weird one because we're talking about Alfreton's identity. They seem to have lost their own identity as well, and it almost feels perfect that those who have gone down together with a 3-3 draw and given us one of the best photos you'll see of the 25-26 season, where everyone in that ground's devastated on the last day.
Yeah, definitely. Just go into the chat as well. We do have a couple of comments. So Chris has put Curzon, another team who have been near the top a lot and now this season have gone down. We have from Graham as well. He's adopted Curzon Ashton, so I'm going for Graham as a jinx on this one. He's adopted them this season. Now they're my newly adopted team. I see Curzon have signed Joe Nolan, Aidan Dowling and Harvey Roberts as they prepare for next season to try and get back to the National League North. We have as well from Luke, a fall from grace by Curzon from the start of the season to the end of the season. And as well, Curzon scored the most goals out of the bottom 4, but conceded one of the most goals in the bottom 4. Kind of counteracts it, doesn't it, to be honest? Defence was a real problem, obviously, for them. Just moving on now. So in 20th, we have Hereford. So first of all, Morgan, I will come to you on Hereford.
I mean,
what's your thoughts?
What a mental season. Like that miraculous recovery, I think I said on multiple occasions on this Monday night show, they're gone. Because when you've got that much backlog, I'm fairly sure the sentence I said was when you've got that backlog, you want to be playing games when you're on good form, but when you're on bad form, you don't want to be playing games. They wanted the training time and they just didn't get it. And eventually it clicked for them. They had that move to Worcester's Rugby Stadium to just get games on. They have said that, I was reading earlier, their ground should be ready for 26-27. They should have the pitch relaid and everything. The drainage should be sorted. So Edgar Street should be back to almost its best.
Jared Bowen's putting money into it, isn't it, to be fair to him?
I didn't know that because I knew obviously came through at Hereford. But with that fan base, if they can get Edgar Street packed again and just have a reset summit, then they should be all right. But yeah, that was just a bit of a miraculous run to safety because in February they looked absolutely gone. Obviously, it wasn't pretty. They did it on the last day, but to get over the line, I think is really impressive by the end.
Yeah, definitely. Dickie, do you have any thoughts on Hereford?
I have lots of thoughts on Hereford. Yes,
I'm glad.
I wouldn't say they keep me up at night, put it that way. But no, I mean, I think the problems with Hereford started last summer. I think there were rumours that Paul Caddis had applied for the job as manager at Partick Thistle and thought he was going to get the job and then didn't get the job and then had to come back and start his recruitment for Hereford sort of behind the curve, really. They also had an issue where they were having the new floodlighting put in and the crane that they brought in damaged the pitch. So there was just sort of like little things. And then I don't think they started awfully, but I think there were some questions about the recruitment. I think a number of the players that they brought in had gone again before Christmas. And then, when the bad weather came, and in fairness to Hereford, it was a really, really wet winter in this part of the world. When the games started getting called off and all of a sudden they're starting to build up a backlog, they can't get any momentum going. Then having to play home games away from home, which is not ideal in so many senses. I mean, and I credit to the supporters who did, they really did come out for those last few games when they needed them. And Aaron Downs did a good job when Paul Caddis eventually was moved aside. Now, he's done enough to earn himself a 2-year contract now. So, of course, the interesting bit now, what can he do now? In some senses, Hereford, it was clear what their objective was last season. They just had to fight for their lives. What will Hereford be like now that that's kind of been addressed and they get the chance to start from scratch? They're still a fan-owned club. I don't necessarily see there being vast amounts more money coming in. So how Aaron Downs can handle that one. I think with Harry Pels on his staff as well will be interesting. One of the players you got there, Andy Williams, he won't be there next season. He's finally decided to retire at the age of 39. But his goals were a big help from him. The fact that George Monday came in on loan with about 2 or 3 months of the season left and has finished joint top scorer for playing for about 2 months for them, again points to the fact that goal scoring was an issue. But it was all the other stuff that came with Hereford this season. I would imagine it was one that everybody was just relieved to see the back of eventually.
Yeah, definitely. Just in the chat as well, we do have Chris. He has put Hereford save their season with playing so many games and pitch problems. Yeah, I don't judge anyone in their pitches because I'm a Rochdale fan, so I can't. So I will leave the comment on the pitches. I'm just glad, obviously, they are going to get that sorted out, to be fair. And yeah, I don't know if it has been confirmed, but there were a lot of rumours that Jared Bowen obviously wanted to put some money into it to obviously help Hereford. And fantastic if that's the case, because that's what I like about Jared Bowen and players like that. They remember the roots and where they come from. So fair play to him. Luke just managed to get over the line by the tightest of margins. Fair play to them. Should be at the level or higher. We shall see how next season goes for Hereford, definitely. But like we say, the pitch, and if they solve that, would obviously be massive to them, but also it's a recruitment side of it as well, because as we mentioned, they are fan-owned, so usually with fan-owned clubs it can be a struggle, as I've seen myself from a Rochdale perspective. Speaking of Paul Caddis, though, we have got 19th Kings Lynn Town. Dickie, I will come to you first. Any thoughts on Kings Lynn?
It's going in there late in the season to try and turn things around. Telford actually played Kings Lynn on the first day of the season when James Rowe was the manager. We obviously knew that Kings Lynn were a full-time side. You looked at their team, and we were really pleased to come away with a 1-1 draw on the opening day. And you did have the feeling that you'd seen one of the sides that was going to be up there. And then, of course, off-field issues caused James Rowe to have to step down there. I think, whilst I can understand it, and I'm going to have to apologise because I can't remember the name of the interim who came in, but I think they ran with the interim manager a little bit too long there. I think they ran with him for something in the region of 2, maybe 3 months before they tried to get somebody permanent in, and of course they got Ian Culverhouse in for a short spell of time. He wasn't able to turn off the tap there. And then of course he stepped aside, and then Paul Caddis came in. So it was a pretty disastrous season for Kings Lynn. It's certainly not where they wanted to be. Ross Crane, you mentioned there, he was a highlight for them.
Yeah.
But again, they would have been looking at having a top scorer with far more than 9 goals to their credit. They had Goldo Mateo at the start of the season and Michael Gayassi. They both moved on. They actually did really, really well to hold on to Crane, because I'm led to believe that there was interest in him from other clubs. But in fairness to them, and in fairness to him as well, they didn't seek to cash in on him, and he didn't push for a move. He stayed, and they survived. But yes, what they can do under Paul Caddis now and under Adam Rooney, his assistant, again, it all comes down to that magic word, recruitment.
Definitely. Morgan, do you have any thoughts on Kings Lynn Town?
I think most of what you can say about them is off-field. Obviously, James Rowe left because of off-field issues. He wasn't sacked because of footballing reasons. And then Ian Culverhouse left because of the whole Sprinklergate CCTV issue. So I think so much of it just comes down to they just had a nightmare off the pitch. And they've always been a bit of a weird club with where they are. They're not exactly near anyone else. And when a few years ago they got promoted to the National League and we didn't, and it was when COVID happened, they were calling off games. I think they've always been a bit of a slimy club. I think that might be a bit harsh, but I know their owner can be a little bit weird on Twitter as well. At least their former owner could be quite loudmouthed on Twitter. And so they've always just had this weird vibe about them off the pitch. And I think it then just kind of leaves the on-pitch stuff to get left behind and people don't talk about as much. And I think it's kind of harsh on them as a club that that's the situation they're in because of so much happening off the pitch. They're kind of stuck on the pitch because there's such less of a focus of it on it. Sorry.
I don't have strong feelings about them, but I can see that some people would find Kings Lynn a hard team to like. They wouldn't find a lot to love about them there, and obviously to their own fans, they mean the world. But I don't think they. That's it, Joe Simpson. Thank you for that, Chris. And my apologies, Joe. I should have remembered. But yes. They are, I know what you mean when you say they are a bit of a strange club in that, as I say, I don't think outside of Kings Lynn, I don't think there's a great deal of love for them.
No, I mean, they finished 6th last season and then finished 19th. It's when things click. They finished 2nd in 22-23. They won the league in 19-20 when COVID hit and points per game came in. Last year, they made the playoffs. So when things click in that area of the world, they can be a good 6th-tier team. But in a season like this, where nothing's clicked off the pitch, it's just completely fallen apart for them.
I often think there's probably not that many other, being unkind to the people of Kings Lynn, but when Kings Lynn are going well, they're the biggest show in town, and they will pull in more fans because of, there aren't that many other teams there around there to go and support. I don't think, but yeah, this season was just not one of those.
Definitely agree with that. In the chat as well, Lucas put always being up there and in and around the playoff mix. Thought they would be up there this season again. That's Luke's thoughts, and this made me laugh. Matt has put such a disappointing season for one of the league's full-time teams. Their ambitions were definitely watered down as the season went on. That made me laugh. That did make me laugh. So, next up, we do have in 18th, Bedford Town. Dickie, I will come to you again on this one. Any thoughts on Bedford Town?
Yeah, Bedford Town had, 18th isn't the highest of league positions, but I think based on the resources they've got available to them, I think they're very much counting this as a success, that they more than held their own. They were safe. I think it was still possible that they could have gone down with about a game or two left, but they did it reasonably. Well, I'd say reasonably comfortably, but I think a lot of people probably tipped them to go straight back. And I think the man you've got in the photograph there, or both of them, are instrumental in that. Tyrone Marsh, when you've got a goal scorer in your team, you've always got a chance. And 26 was massive for them this season, and he is going to be a loss. He's just signed for Oxford City, probably signed for them by virtue of the fact that manager Lee Bircham has stepped down as well. He's taken the manager's job at Hemel Hempstead for next season as well. So, and I think the Lee Bircham factor was what got Tyrone Marsh to Bedford, and similarly a number of other players as well. So it'll be interesting to see how they go next year. They won't have the problem of having their angry neighbours from Real Bedford just a couple of 100 yards away in the same division. So they can at least still claim that they are the top dog in the town. But yeah, replacing Marsh is going to be almost impossible, I would say. Another big factor there, we wouldn't ever see him on there, Nathan Ashmore. When they signed Nathan Ashmore from Boreham Wood and got him back in, I think he came on loan 3 times in the end. He was absolutely huge for them because Lee Bircham has admitted that they have a big player turnover. Most of the players are on contract. There's a revolving door because he's always trying to improve them. And the goalkeeping position was one of those that had that revolving door. But when Ashmore came in, he absolutely made that position his, probably gave confidence to everybody else in the team to have him back there, and that's when their results started to really improve.
Morgan, do you have anything to say about Bedford?
Not on top of that, my main points were that it's been a really good first season for them at the 6th tier, and it's due to the experience in quality that they got both ends of the pitch. Nathan Ashmore in one box, Tyrone Marsh in the other, and you've got you can almost not sleepwalk to a comfortable position, but if you have experience in both boxes, you got goals at one end and you're keeping them out at the other because you've got experience and quality, you're halfway to you're halfway to staying up anyway. So yes, it kind of came down to the last week or two, but they did what they needed to. And yes, they might have had a bit of revolving door, but if you've had solidity in the main two places you need, you're going to have a decent chance at staying up in a league that you're very, very new to.
Yeah. Just quickly as well in the chat, Chris has put Bedford, strong first season in a very new league for them. Completely agree with that one, Chris. He's also put Bedford scored 66 goals overall, so Tyrone scored a quarter of them, and then he also put, I think that's the case, or I might be bad at maths. And yes, 26 goals for a side in 18th. Wow, yeah, that's some statement, to be fair. Completely agree with that.
And one thing I would throw into them as well is what they did is they did also overcome that geography issue, which has sometimes been a problem for the likes of, I know when Braintree got put into the National League North and one or two others, and the split has been, look, the split is the split, but it's been unkind on some occasions to teams, and they've really struggled with the travel and getting the quality of players in who are prepared to do the travelling. So that's another factor that they've overcome this season really, really well. So yeah, that absolutely, they should be really proud of their efforts.
Definitely. Morgan, I'm going to come to you next. So, in 17th position, we do have Oxford City. What's your thoughts on Oxford City in their season?
Weird clubs that have got unlucky in recent years because they won the National League South. They got into the National League in 22-23. They won National League South. Then 23-24, they get relegated straight back down from the National League. And they did look out of place that 1 year they were in the National League. But then get relegated to National League North. And the National League North and South, I think they're quite different leagues. One's more technical, one's more physical. So I think they got a little bit unlucky. And like we're saying about Bedford, and I know you said Braintree, and who's the other one that near Stansted Airport? I know they complained about it quite a lot the other year when they were in National League North because of the split. I think they've just got a little bit unlucky in terms of kind of what's happened, because they had a plan and everything, and then obviously Ross Jenkins, I think he got them up. He then got the Bournemouth job, and then there was that weird swap almost of Luke Garrard and Ross Jenkins going back and forth. So I think they're just kind of struggling to find their footing in National League North at the moment. When they're coming up against Bishop Stortford, thank you, Chris. That was really
He's a man.
He is, he's perfect.
Comes to us quickly.
When there's a lot of teams in National League North that have been in that league for a long time, we're talking about your Alfrettons and Curzons, even teams like Darlington have been in that league forever. There's a lot of teams in National League North that have been there forever, and they were always a National League South club that then got shifted across because of when they got relegated. So I think they got a bit unlucky and they're just trying to find the footing. Next year, they should be a bit better, just off the fact that they've signed Tyrone Marsh, who we were just talking about, got 25 for Bedford. So when you look at DJ Sturridge got 10, you're adding 15 goals on top of that as your best goal scorer. That gives you a decent foundation to start from. If you can find one or two players to give him a little bit of service, he could get 20 goals again, and they're already looking at staying up, and then you can build from there, really.
Yeah, they've got new ownership at Oxford, came in just before the end of the season, and they've said that they're going full-time next season, which might be why I see that George Burrows left them yesterday to join Chester, and it could be potentially be because the full-time, or at least a step towards a full-time schedule, isn't going to work for them. And that is something that perhaps clubs that look to go full-time, a challenge that they have. But Oxford, they, again, it was only the last couple of weeks of the season before they were genuinely safe. But they were in the relegation places for quite a while. So they gritted their teeth and they got on with it and they got out of it. And that will, stand them in good stead. They've proven something to themselves there. And I think with the change in status for them and like you say, with a player like Marsh coming in, I think they can look at being better next season, definitely.
Just on the comments as well from Luke, he has had an amazing run of form towards the end of the season. And Chris has put decent season for them. But yes, with the new ownership, that will be interesting. We shall find out next season, won't we? We shall find out what happens. We do have, though, 16th, Worksop Town. That was obviously another promoted team from last season. What's your thoughts on this one, Dickie, Worksop Town?
Yeah, I mean, Worksop came up as the playoff winners in the NPL behind Macclesfield. I think everybody kind of, and we will come to them obviously, but I think obviously with the backing they've got, Macclesfield were obviously the one that everybody thought would do a lot better. But I think Worksop again can feel reasonably content with what they've done. They particularly over the second half of the season. Where they achieved some quite notable results against some of the better sides in the division. I think I say Aaron Martin. He's been around the block. He knows what he's doing. 13 from him. Lewis Whittam is a winger I like the look of. He contributes goals and assists for them. They brought in Ollie Greaves as well when he was released by Buxton. I know that because he scored twice against Telford on his first game. So, yeah, thank you, Ollie. You couldn't have left it a week, could you, mate? But no, but he found the target for them as well. So there's some decent recruitment there. I think 16th was, safe again with a couple of weeks to go before the season was out. And they're another team that I think can be looking at building on the platform that they had last year and looking to push closer to mid-table or the top half next season. I think surviving your first season is huge, isn't it?
Definitely. Just in the chat as well, we do have comments. So, fantastic season for us, Worksop, considering 99% of people tipped us to go down. Signing Ollie Greaves was instrumental in keeping us up. To be fair, I don't want to say everybody, but I think a lot of our season predictions I will go back to and I'll send them in our group chat. But I think a lot of us did actually have Worksop to go down. So it's completely right on that one. Chris as well put Worksop, very decent season. And we had a crazy game against Worksop versus Spenny. Just going to the next one now. So 15th, we do have Charlie. Morgan, I am going to come to you in a second. But on this one, they're really unexpected for me finishing in this position. I expected a little bit more from Charlie, if I'm being quite honest. I don't know about yourself, Morgan, but I will ask you your thoughts on their season.
Yeah, I mean, just looking down my notes, the first 3 words I have a really disappointing season. I had them, I think, of possible playoff winners. I definitely had them in the playoffs because they finished in the playoff. They finished 5th last year with joint second amount of goals scored last season, and I think they were playoffs the year before as well. So they were definitely a team. Yeah, playoffs last 2 years. Looking at my notes, so they're definitely a team that I expected to be much better than this, and it just never really got going for them. In terms of like what they need to do, I know they lost Craig Hewitt to us in about November because his first game was against Eastleigh, which was November. So they lost Craig Hewitt, who's obviously a good goal scorer for them, and I think he got about 16 for them the year before. So talented player, but when you look at their top goal scorer being 2 players on 7, considering last year they had the joint second most goals in the league, it's a massive step back. Andy Priest has been there for 4 years, I think, now. So if there's anyone you want to rebuild a club, it's someone that's been there, knows the club, knows the area. So they should be in steady hands to go again next year. But yeah, really, really disappointing from Chorley when only scored 27 away from home. 39 at home is a bit better, but their away form's just not being there. So I'm not sure kind of what's gone on that's caused this downfall and this poor season. But they've stayed up. They've given themselves another chance at it next year. They've not completely collapsed and done what Alfred and Noel Curzon have done, have fallen out of the league. So they can kind of flush this one, have a good summer and go again next year. But yeah, really poor season from them.
I thought they'd finish higher, I have to say that. I think we played them in early September and we gave them a good game and still managed to lose 3-1. And it was one of those things where you thought to yourself, well, yeah, but that's what good sides do. When they got their chances, they took them. And coming away from that game, I didn't anticipate Chorley being anything other than a playoff side or very close to being a playoff side. But yeah, they went through a period where they would have a good result and you thought, is that the corner turned? And then they didn't build on it with a second result. They didn't seem to be able to follow it up with another good result the following week. So it was wins were a bit sporadic and there was no real sequences of results that helped them build any momentum. I'm not sure in terms of investment off the field as well. I mean, that kind of rumours that ownership, who I don't know how interested they are necessarily, and that you say they lost Craig Hewitt. Couldn't blame him for making that move at all, but I don't know that they're another side who I didn't really feel that they thought they just seemed to fall back on the players that were still with them, rather than going out and like trying to source a replacement anywhere. I don't think there was that much of that. I think they brought Taylor O'Kane in from Fylde when Fylde let him go on loan. I don't think he necessarily pulled up any trees for them. And yeah, it's hard to know what hasn't been right at Chorley this season, because Andy Priest is a vastly experienced manager. They've got good players, but joint top scorers on 7. Again, I think Morgan's spot on. It points to the problem, and that if you just can't put the ball in the net enough, you're not going to win enough games. And that certainly, was Chorley's problem this season. They just one good result, then couldn't follow it up.
No, definitely. I remember Andy Priest as well a long time ago when he was actually Bury's manager. I used to love the Rochdale Bury games, but it's someone I'm very, very familiar with, Andy Priest. But I'm sure if anybody is going to get them back to where, obviously, if they have been inconsistent, it's going to be him. I'm hoping so anyway. I shouldn't like him from the Bury connections, but I do actually really like him, to be fair. I think he's a very good manager. Just in the chat as well, Chris has put Chorley, very average season for Chorley, which is a massive surprise. We have from Luke as well, underwhelming season. Yeah, I completely agree with that. That's the right word, in my opinion. Very underwhelming. And Chris has put, I had Chorley in the playoffs in his predictions. Like I said, what we'll do, we'll have to get them up at some point and just have a look at everyone's predictions, because I know mine's absolutely shocking anyway. Definitely is. Next up, 14th, we have Southport. Dickie, Southport?
Yeah, if it wasn't for the fact that they made a really, really slow start, then I think it could have been a top half finish for Southport. I mean, they did reach the FA Trophy semi-finals as well. But I have to admit, in the early weeks of the season, I was a bit worried for them, because I wasn't sure about Neil Dans as a manager, because he'd not really managed this level before, and you always have that question about, is he going to know, what's going to work in this division? And I know that kind of youth football is maybe where he's come from, and that's not always been the happiest of combinations, is bringing lots of young players in to what's a tough league. But they got it going. They brought Chris Say in on loan from Wigan Athletic, and he did well for them. Obviously, Jordan Slee was top scorer, but I don't think Say would be that far behind. And yeah, towards Christmas, sort of like November, December time, it started to pick up. And then whilst it never really hit the heights league-wise, I think the FA Trophy run was great for them. That will have put a bit of money in the coffers as well. So again, I think they can kind of look forward positively to next season. I think the problem they've got is that some of their younger players are being coveted by people from elsewhere. I know Teddy Lavelle's been linked with moves elsewhere. Ben Collins, their left back, has already gone. He's left for Radcliffe as well. So again, that's the problem with when you discover these diamonds. There's always somebody who wants to come and take them off your hands. So yeah, I think ultimately, I don't think they'll be pleased with 14th, but given how they started, I think they'll be reasonably content with it.
Morgan?
Yeah, really good second half of the season for them. I remember we were looking at the table January, February time on this show, and we're like, Southport are one of these teams in trouble when Peterborough Sports were looking better, and Alfred and Curzon were dropping down the table, and you're looking at Southport thinking, are they really going to go? Because I know they've had a few seasons in the bottom half of the table, and you're thinking, is this the year they finally drop? Second half of the season was great. They got, as you said, Chris Sayin from Wigan. He's 22. He's an attacking midfielder, and he got 9 goals in 21 games for them. Jordan Slew got 10 across the season, but that combination just pulled them away from it. And yeah, Neil Dan's new to the level, but I thought the signing of Chris Say, using his contacts in the area, with them being in the Northwest, there are a lot of clubs that you can take players from. He's done a really, really good job for them. It'll be interesting to see kind of if he's able to have as good 26-27 season as he did this year, when it was kind of out of nowhere what's he going to look like with a full summer and everything like that. But when they were struggling, Jordan Slew scored goals in the Football League for Morecambe and other teams as well. So you kind of thought you've got a bit of young quality and you've got a bit of experience in Slew. A few goals will drag them away. And 37 goals at home in what would be 23 games, plus 7 goal difference in their home games. They did enough. And they won't be happy with 14th when you look at it, and kind of they are one of the bigger clubs when you think about it. But in terms of how bad their first half of the season was, the second half definitely dragged them away.
Am I right in saying Danny Lloyd still plays for them as well? We had him at Dale and he was very, very good, very experienced as well. The only thing is with Danny Lloyd, he picks up injuries, but with the injuries, to be fair to him, it's really sad because he never just niggles here and there. They're quite bad injuries. So I remember when Jim Bentley came in, he brought Danny Lloyd to Southport.
Yeah, he's still there.
Yeah, he's still there. He came off the bench on the final day against us. Yeah, and there's a couple of others in there. Sam Minihan is in there as well, who was at Stockport County. So they have got a little bit of experience in there with some of those younger players. So the blend kind of feels right. Jordan Keane is in there as well, again, another former Stockport player. Again, I think they're another side who, based on the second half of the season, can definitely feel that they should be aspiring higher and aiming for more next season.
Sam Minihan as well. He came through our youth. What a throwback. Really good as well. He was really solid as well, Sam Minihan. I know, especially for Stockport County, he was very loved, wasn't he, at Stockport County? Really good player. Chris has put Southport, great trophy, run but finish. Mid-table in the end, and Matt has put as well, Neil Dans has done a very good job in steadying the ship and getting a respectable mid-table finish. Completely agree with that one. Morgan, I am going to come to you next. There's a lot to say about this team. 13th, Radcliffe, because obviously the pairing of all pairings has split up. One of them has gone to Bury, but talk to us about Radcliffe and their season.
Awful end to the season. All the hard work was done in the first half of the season. I think they were flirting with playoffs at a point. They were really looking like they were going to do something this year. Obviously, Rio Clegg's had a fantastic season. One of his goals was up for the National Goal of the Season award. Really, really good run, and then he just does a gorgeous drag back, takes the defender out of it, and just puts it over the keeper. It's a fantastic goal if you haven't seen it. But you look at their goals. Both home and away, 39 away from home, 37 at home. Like, they've just been goals galore, but it just kind of fell apart because they beat Peterborough Sports on the 21st of Feb, and then they didn't win again until the last day of the season. They went 12 without a win. Obviously, Bernard and Jono split up, with Jono going to Bury, which is his hometown team.
It's like a marriage end, isn't it? It's just a divorce the way we're talking about it.
Yeah, it is. And they're going to have a really interesting summer because the pulling power that Jono's going to have at Bury. They've got loads of money. They've got a massive fan base for the level they're going to be playing at. And then Rio Clegg's just scored 26 goals. It's going to be a really interesting summer for Radcliffe because they finished 13th. They flirted with the playoffs. Are we going to be looking at this next year and they will finish 20th or below, whether that's just staying up or having gone down, just because it's going to be a tornado of a summer where if Clegg leaves and players are choosing other teams in the Northwest or going to Bury and happily playing at a lower level, because at this point Radcliffe aren't professional. So if you're going to stay as a semi-pro player, you might as well go to Bury instead. There's going to be bigger crowds there compared to Radcliffe. So it would be a really interesting summer to see what players they can pull through the door compared to what other teams in the Northwest or what Bury in leagues below can do.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I mean, you're exactly right there in that, the first half of the season, they were looking like they were going to be a playoff team and they were in those playoff positions. And then I guess what we all imagined was the unthinkable happened. I think we all felt that if Anthony Johnson did ever leave there, it would be Bernard would be going with him. Anthony went. left Bernard with the kids, if I can use that expression. And he just found it a little bit harder than I mean. I had a really, really good chat with him only about a week or so after he'd stepped into the role. They came to Telford, and they lost to us. But again, I don't think at the time that we necessarily felt that was a signal of Radcliffe in decline or anything like that, you know. And I think he said something to the effect of me, you know, if we finish in the playoff places, I'll be the greatest manager ever because I managed to keep this going. If we don't, he said, oh, you know, I'll expect to get the criticism for it. I suppose he's got a chance to maybe set his own mark on it now, hasn't he? A little bit. He did suggest he maybe wanted to change their style a little bit and try and make it a little bit more of a Bernard Morley team than an Anthony Johnson and a Bernard Morley team. But yeah, when you've got Barry up the road and you've got John O, who knows what all their players are about, and with the crowds that they've got, and you know, if the finances, Radcliffe can appeal to people on the basis of you can play step 2 football with us. I guess it comes down to what players' priorities are. You know, if they're happier playing lower for more money, then, you know, perhaps that's where they're going to go. So I can perhaps foresee some challenging times ahead for them. But I'd say Bernard, had a great chat with him, really wish him well with it for this season, because, you know, they're very different people to how they are projected in the media, Bernard and Jono. When you speak to them, you know, they know their stuff, and they don't come across the way they are on the TV.
I really like both of them, me. I really, really do. It just made me laugh with us all then how we were going on about the divorce and then the kids. It's like a proper it's like we've completely split up a family, hasn't it? It really did make me laugh.
It is like that to a certain extent, but it's going to be very interesting to watch that dynamic between those two teams, because, as I say, they, you know, previously you might have looked at, you know, Bury might have been looking to try and bring players. Radcliffe might have been trying to look to bring players in from Bury, but with Bury getting promoted, then the gap between them isn't quite so big anymore. Could the flow be in the other direction?
Here as well, what Chris has put. So another one's obviously left, following Jono to go to Bury from Radcliffe. And we do have a couple of comments as well on the season. So Chris has also put the split up of a pair and Radcliffe had just fallen down the league massively. And then we have as well, Real Clegg, wow, some amount of goals there. Completely agree with that. 26, very good goal tally. And of course, Chris has put again, the breakup of Anthony Johnson and Bernard Morley was a massive story of the season. They've been at the same teams since Salford. Completely agree with that.
Before that, Ramsbottom United.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. The next team, just want to take a moment because everybody knows with my Rochdale connections how much I love this manager, Bobby Grant. But yes, 12th position, Marine did finish there. And I just want to say as well, at the beginning of the season, before a ball was even kicked, to be fair, I was a little bit unsure of this appointment because I love Bobby Grant, the footballer. And like I said, he's one of my favourite ever players at Rochdale, he was. But I was there thinking, does he have the experience? Does he have what it takes to be a manager with Marine? And I'm really, really impressed with him, if I'm being quite honest. Dickie, I don't know if you feel the same with Bobby Grant and his season so far in managing.
Yeah, he's done really well. I mean, the same as you, and you wonder how it's going to be. But you know, he played for them a little, and he does know the level a little bit too. And he's actually, you know, it's been a really, really good season for them. If anything, I would think they might be slightly disappointed with the 12th place finish, because then they were higher at times. They were closer to the playoffs than certainly they finished. And whether it was just having the FA Trophy run alongside that, I don't know. Whether that perhaps harmed their chances of actually getting into the playoff positions. But they are, you know, they know what they're about. They've got some good players. Finn Sinclair-Smith terrific both times I saw him this season. And they've invested the money that they made from that FA Cup run they had a few years ago during COVID, when, of course, they had Tottenham at their place. That's helped to, boost them. But they've not gone bonkers with it as well. It's been a very steady growth with that as well. And again, I think Marine will comfortably be at least a mid-table season team next season, if not higher.
Morgan?
Yeah, really good second season for them at this level. They've really, really solidified. I know it's not always a thing at like National League North South level, but people do say like second season syndrome. You're going to come up, solidify, and then kind of lose your way and get relegated. But no, they've solidified really, really well. Sinclair Smith, really good season from him. And yeah, I think Bobby Grant's done really well as well to get another good FA Trophy run going. He does seem to be, or Marine as a club, seem to be really embracing cup competitions. Obviously, they had the FA Cup game against Spurs a few years ago, and then a couple of good FA Trophy runs that will be helping kind of bring that extra bit of cash into the club, which for a team that doesn't get big crowds or known as really a National League North club, considering this their second year, I think it's really good to get that extra cup money in where other teams aren't prioritising it. So it should help them kick on.
Just in the chat as well, Chris has put Marine, another great trophy run, and kind of surprised it didn't get a playoff place. We do have as well Luke, surprised most teams higher up aren't looking at trying to get Finlay, Sinclair, Smith. I'm sure there'll be some eyes on him. I'm sure they will. And of course, Matt has put in the chat too, a really good season for Marine. Massive injury issues though, along with the trophy, semi-final loss, saw things and peter out a bit, but towards the end, big season next year with plans of the new ground. Really, really good. Obviously, from a Marine perspective, and also for my money, Finn is one of the more exciting players in the league, a proper old school winger who loves to run at fullbacks. Don't be promoting him on here. You don't want anyone to see that, Matt. You should be saying, nope. He's not very good. I'm joking. That's the worst thing, isn't it, about obviously when you get players like that, there's obviously going to be some eyes on him, 100%, especially when obviously people have seen him perform not only in the league but also in a cup run as well. That's the only problem, isn't it?
It is. I was having the same thoughts about Bobby Grant himself as well. In that, he will be putting himself in the window as a manager that teams a little bit higher might be looking at and going, well, he's done a good job there. Might we be interested in taking him? But yeah, as I say, we've just seen in the comments there, I think Sinclair Smith signed for next season. So that's really, really positive news for them. Yeah, there we go.
Definitely. As well, the players, if they're signing those contracts as well, I know it's always good to have players in contract if a bigger club comes in and they do have to pay a fee. But also it's a good sign that they believe in the project as well, isn't it, from that perspective? So, yeah, really,
he's clearly happy there.
Yeah,
he's clearly happy there to have signed up for it. And, yes, I'm sure if the offer was right, then and it suited his circumstances, then yeah, maybe he would go, but at least they'll get fairly compensated for him in that case.
Of course. There's one person though who I will come to on this one. So in 11th position, AFC Telford United. Your thoughts on this season, Dickie?
Well, I was going to say, I was going to ask, did you want Morgan to go first?
I know, I was tempted.
Let's hear what Morgan's got to say, and I'll join in.
I was going to say, my notes have just said, let Dickie talk about this one. You know what? You kind of know your stuff when it comes to Telford. So I was just going to kind of delegate it, but Mike Stenson, really good season for him, 17 goals. I think the home form as well there, 47 goals, only 30 conceded, 11 wins. When you look at it, 11 wins compared to 12 not wins in terms of 6 draws, 6 losses, really good home form for them this year. And I don't know, you said you've been kind of up and down a little bit. So to be able to solidify and finish mid-table in National League North, you can kind of kick on a little bit and see if you can get back to the National League. Obviously, the away form isn't as good, but that's kind of expected for any team. It's rare when your away form is as good as your home form. So, yeah, I think solid season from Telford and, yeah, looking to kick on. No, you weren't far from the playoffs. So if you can kind of sneak that 6th, 7th spot at the end of the year, at the end of next season, then you're in a really good spot.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't win away from home until the second week in December. First league win, waited till then, and then they just started to come with real regularity after that. It was like we spoke to Kevin Wilkin about it, and is there a bit of a mental block there with the players? And I don't think it was. I think it was just as it's been with a lot of the team. I mean, you say about Matt Stenson, obviously he's got a lot of experience. I think he's 32, 33 now, possibly Matty. And there are some experienced players, but there was a lot of youth in that side. And I know Kevin Wilkin was very excited by working with them, but was also realistic in it, saying that, they're still learning. They will be in situations that they've not been in before. And, perhaps I would hope that very much that we are a stronger team next season in terms of our mentality. I'm not saying we were weak this season, but I think we'll be stronger for the fact that we did have a chance of a playoff place, and then we let it through our grasp. I think if the players are, smart, and I think they are, they'll go away and reflect on that, think about what they could have done better, and be better for the experience, really. But yeah, it was a really, really enjoyable season for us. It was a bit up and down, and we were talking about Marine there, and I was thinking we had a loss in Marine in mid-November, which I think dropped us down to about 17th or 18th, and I think some of the more pessimistic fans were thinking, that we're going to be in a relegation battle here, as they kind of maybe imagined we would be, and then through the back end of November and December and January, I think we were just about the hottest team in the National League North. I mean, we got to. We did well in the FA Trophy, knocked Altrincham out. We had that 8-0 against Curzon. We went and won 4-1 away at Merthyr. And we went and knocked out Hornchurch in the trophy at their place with 10 men. We had Stenson sent off. So it didn't seem like at that point, it felt like we were unstoppable. It felt like nothing could that it was there for us if we wanted to take it. And it was a little bit of that lack of experience down the final leg that I think did for us in the end. But as I say, hopefully the players will be better for it. And we've got a really good gaffer in Kevin. He knows what he's doing. So yeah, got to be optimistic.
Just going to the chat as well, Luke has had his say. He's put good season, I think, for Telford, especially when coming up the previous season. And also, Chris's thoughts, Telford can't stand the place. Spennymoor never win there, haha, but always up there. And guess missing out on the playoffs must hurt a little.
Yeah, a little bit. It's quite funny you mentioned the Spennymoor thing there. It's literally, I know when we go to Spennymoor and we've got friends there that we've really got into their heads now. I think Spennymoor have only beaten Telford once in any competitive fixture since they've been promoted into this division. So yeah, we have kind of got the Indian side over, and we did the double this season as well. Sorry to mention that, Chris, but yeah.
To be fair, he mentioned Telford first, so you hit back at him, didn't you?
That's okay. No, Spennymoor is literally, it is my favourite away ground to go. It's not far from where my relatives live. Some smashing people there, so I've got no beef with Spennymoor town whatsoever. It's a great place.
And speaking of 10th position, we have Spennymoor Town. Morgan, I am going to come to you first on this one. And also, Chris, if you do want to have some words on your season, please feel free to, because I will read it out in the chat. And of course, top goal scorer, though. Let's just mention Mr. Spennymoor himself too. If it's going to be anyone, it's going to be Glenn Taylor.
So when you said we were doing this, I started making my notes, and I was sat on the sofa making my notes earlier. I was like, I swear Spennymoor always finish like 9th or 10th, just miss out on the playoffs, never in any danger. It's their 5th consecutive season finishing 9th or 10th from National League North, and yet again, it's led by Glenn Taylor. I think that's they're such a pillar of consistency. You're never too worried about them. You're never too kind of optimistic about them in terms of getting playoffs or suddenly making that jump to be like fourth or fifth. They are such a pillar of consistency. You can almost, people make the joke about Preston in the Championship finishing 12th every year. You can almost write down that next season Spennymoor are going to finish from 9th or 10th and Glen Taylor will hit 20 odd goals. I think they've got some good performances about other players. Rob Ramshaw, I know, is really liked up there and has had some really good performances. Ollie Dyson, former York Manor, is really liked up there. Really hard-working player. So I think, Spennymoor have just done what they've continued to do. I think the one worry is at what point does Glen Taylor's goal scoring slow down, because he is getting up there with age now. He's not in his early 20s. He's getting up there with age. So at what point does Glen Taylor's goal scoring slow down and they either find a replacement or they slide down the table because they can't find a replacement? So it's going to come at some point for them, unfortunately. But I think for these last 5 years, they've been absolutely excellent in terms of just consistent, and you don't have to worry about them. Like we've had Chorley fall down the table, or Alfred and Kurzman spoke about playoff teams then falling apart and getting relegated, or Radcliffe had a poor second half of the season. We've spoke about a lot of teams that have done good things and then it's fallen away. We've not had that worry for Spennymoor for the last 5 years, and I think the only time that comes is at what point does Glen Taylor hang up his boots. But another really good, solid, consistent season from Spennymoor.
Definitely.
Yeah, and again, I mean, they did have a managerial change. I mean, the FA Trophy final, not in the season just finished, but the season before. And I don't know, perhaps the hope might have been that they might have kicked on a little bit and finished a little bit higher, get into that elusive playoff place for them, but didn't quite happen. And it was a shame because Graham Lee liked him. Certainly I'd spoken with him up there, but they just got into the doldrums, I think, in that period, sort of January, February after Christmas, where it just felt like they were drifting a little bit. They weren't in any danger of dropping any lower down the table, but they didn't look to be in any threat to anybody above them either. And I don't think anybody should underestimate how difficult it is to consistently finish in the top half in a division. But at the same time, you do also understand that you hope for a little bit more. Tommy Miller's been manager there previously, had a spell when he took over from Jason Ainsley. That didn't go fantastically, but I'm sure he'll have learned from that. I suspect he's probably got Matty Dolan to call upon alongside him. Matty Dolan was he was the assistant, or certainly he was the interim before they made the appointment. So, I mean, again, Glen Taylor's one of my favourite players in that division. If it wasn't for age being a factor now, I would consistently pick him in my side. But yes, I suppose eventually they are going to have to contemplate a future without him. But he signed a 2-year extension, I think. So he's certainly going to be around for a couple of seasons more. But I think he is at that stage where he needs that bit more help around him.
Yeah.
I think you're spot on. I think they need a little bit more around him. A lot of the old guard that he was at the club with have gone, and some of the younger players that have come in haven't yet stepped up to that same kind of level. So, but I'm sure they're learning, they're progressing. So, wait and see with them.
I'm always proper defensive when it comes to a player with age, because obviously we have our own Glen Taylor and Ian Henderson, and it's so sad. It's so sad when you see them aging and stuff, but then at the same time, and it's one of them, you just don't want it to end because you feel like you've kind of grew up with them. You essentially feel like a family member in that aspect. So, and I feel since I've done this pod as well, the last few seasons, I feel like I have an attachment to Glen Taylor as well now.
Well, he doesn't look like he's aging there, does he? Gleaming teeth, not a hair out of place. He's a fine-looking fella, is Glen. So, he's not looking his age. And he's still knocking the goals in as well. So, clearly it's not affecting him.
Definitely. Just in the chat as well, we do have Chris. Obviously, he's spoke about their season. So, Moors always having our mid-season drop, which kick our backsides in the end, which we always miss out in the playoffs. I've been banned for going away to the USA, but the GOAT, Glen Taylor. Every time you go to the USA on holiday, you end up like it goes to pot. You have to be there all the way through the season, and then you might push for that playoff place, Chris. You need to go to the USA out of season. I'm blaming you. And he's also put, Tommy Miller is a full manager now, and he knows the club inside out already. Matty Dolan, still a player and a first team coach as well.
I thought he'd still be there.
Yeah. So next, 9th, we have Darlington. Morgan, do you want to speak about Darlington?
Oh, I've got loads of notes on them. I'm really disappointed in Darlington.
I knew you'd have loads. That's why I came to you. I thought Morgan's going to be the expert on Darlington.
They've got so many former York links. It's absolutely mental. It's ridiculous. I mean, the two players on screen, both former York, Cedric Main and Steve Watson. But you look through that, Paddy McLaughlin's on loan there. Scott Barrow was there as well. So a lot of former York links. Really disappointed in their end of the season, because at a point they were going to finish, I was pretty happy they were going to finish 5th, nailed on. I'm like really happy for everyone involved there, because they've got quite a lot of like older players as well. You look down that squad and there's just players that you've been there for 4, 5, 6 years. Will Hatfield's another one, he's been there for a good few years. So they look pretty nailed on, and I know I said it on this podcast, when they get into the playoffs, I'm going to back Darlington because of the experience. They should be able to get it over the line. They've got players that have been there, done it. They don't even make the playoffs because they collapse at the point. From March onwards, end of March, start of April, lost 3 in a row. They lost to Kidderminster, who obviously won the playoffs, Fylde, who won the league, and Scarborough, who did get into the playoffs. 3 games that they should do better with, but then they almost killed themselves and put their own nail in their own coffin. They failed to beat Marine mid-table, Telford, who, Dickie, I know you said you had a good end of the season and were mid-table, but still, I think that's one that they should be winning. And they failed to beat Oxford on the last day of the season. I don't think it's good enough that they go into those last few games of the season and they're just losing games or dropping points where they shouldn't be at all. So I'll be really interested to see what next season looks like, because they did commit quite a lot to this year with Paddy McLaughlin, Scott Barrow, Will Hatfield, I think it's Tom Lees, Cedric Main, who's already left. I can't remember why Cedric Main, I think he's gone to Fylde. He left.
Fylde, yeah.
Fylde.
It was quite soon after the season ended. Steve Watson's there, and he'll be on decent wages. They're fan owned, and they always have the back the budget campaign, which does really well. I think they raise about 50 grand every year for their budget, which is fantastic. And as a place, I know you said the same about Kings Lynn. It's a place where when Darlington are doing really well, they can pack out that ground. I know they've had stadium issues in the past with George Reynolds, but that small ground they have, when the team go in, the fans really, really back that club. It'll be really interesting to see what this summer looks like, because if they can put together a competitive squad, you'd think they can get playoffs again. But this year they just tailed off at the end, and it's really, really disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, you spoke about the game against us towards the end of the season. They were winning that 1-0. Main missed 2 penalties. They had Jack Maskell sent off, and we scored a 96-minute equaliser, so that probably did for them. And they didn't enjoy seeing us last season because we beat them 6-0 in the FA Cup at their place as well. But I actually think that was quite a turning point for them, because Hatfield got injured that day and didn't really play for the rest of the season. And it was quite apparent from the way they collapsed that day that they were lacking legs in midfield. And I think Steve Watson and Terry Mitchell made some changes, got some younger legs into that midfield area. And from that point, they never looked back, and they were consistently, the disappointment from them was that they were 5th in the table in a playoff place without ever having a real grasp on it. And it just slipped away from them at the end of the season. But certainly, I mean, they had a better campaign than I thought they were going to when we went there and absolutely, smashed them in the FA Cup. You just think, sometimes teams don't come back from this kind of thing, but they did, and you've got to commend them for that and for the way they did it, and just the way that they, I guess, not reinvented themselves completely, but the way they had to adjust. Hatfield's been such an important player for them, and they had to adjust without having him there. Main's been huge for them, finding another goal scorer who can do that. I know Maskell contributes goals as well, but you've lost potentially about maybe a quarter to a third of the goal output in your side there, let alone assists as well. So that's going to be a big gap to fill.
This made me laugh from Chris. So first of all, he put boo, and then he's put Darlow, bottle jobs as per usual. They don't like the playoffs either, but they need a massive rebuild again. And he's also put they've raised 100,000 for this season so far, Morgan.
That's wild. As a part-time club, for the fans to be able to raise 100 grand before the end of May is really, really impressive.
Definitely. The next team as well. We weren't that long ago, bless them, speaking about them in third place. But I'm going to be honest, regardless of that, I think they would have bit your hand off if you would have said to them, you will finish in 8th position this season. So in 8th place, we do have Merthyr Town. Dickie, I will come to you on Merthyr. What's your thoughts on their season?
Yes, I think if you look at it overall, and if before the season started, if you'd offered them that, I'm sure they would have taken it. It will be disappointing to them that they've dropped out.
Yeah.
The loss of Reese ultimately did harm them eventually. I think I've just referred to me, he felt like they had a get out of jail card with him, that even if they weren't necessarily playing well, he could score. It felt at times almost like when he wanted. And they did carry on in a pretty good vein for about a month or so after he'd finished. But I think the longer it went on, the harder it got to sort of not paper over the cracks, but their get out of jail card was gone. But they absolutely had a good season. They had a really refreshing attitude to it, which seemed to be if you score 4, we'll score 5. So I think they were a real breath of fresh air in that respect. I think their fans were realistic and were, when they came to Telford in November and they beat us 4-2, and their fans were absolutely loving it. And who could blame them? They were playing football probably beyond their wildest dreams for a Merthyr, as a Merthyr supporter. They were beating just about everybody. And they had like the hottest property in the league at the time. So they were having an absolutely fantastic time of it. Yes, I suppose ultimately they got to be a little bit disappointed. But, I mean, they've given Paul Michael the manager's job on a full-time basis rather than a part-time basis for next season now. So they've obviously got faith in him. They've lost Corley Cox to Hereford, so he's not going to be filling that scoring gap for them. But they've kept Lewis Twamley so far as I know. He's been another really, really important player for them. And again, they're one of the biggest. If you're not a rugby person, then Merthyr is the biggest draw in football in that neck of the woods. So I think Merthyr will go well again next season.
Morgan, do you have any thoughts on Merthyr?
In my notes, I've put really poor second half of the season, but I think that's harsh. Like they were third, but they lost Reese, and you're never going to really be able to replace someone who got 25 goals before he went. Was it January? I think he went to Forest Green. So it's really
he went on New Year's Day.
Yeah, New Year's Day. So 25 goals before the turn of the year is really, really impressive and almost impossible to replace. So big picture, 8th in their first season in this league is really impressive. And Lewis Twamley, I think, deserves a lot of credit. He got 16 goals from midfield, which fantastic season from him. I don't think he stays. I know, Joe, that obviously you do NLFullTime with. I know he's spoken about Lewis Twamley quite a lot and how talented he is. So if they lose, obviously, Reese New Year's Day and then Twamley in the summer, then they're in for a big rebuild. But I think there does need to be some level of credit given to Paul Michael because he did put up a side that kind of built around goals. It wasn't Ricardo Reese just pulling it out of nowhere. There were goals all over the pitch. The fact that they got 47 at home and 48 away, Reese got 25 of them, but that's over 90 goals. Reese got a quarter of them, yes, but I think there's goals coming from everywhere. When Twamley can get 16 from midfield, if Michael can keep doing that same kind of tactical build and just kind of find the players to fill a spot, then they could be in a similar spot next season, even if they're not able to reach the heights of third like they did this year.
Yeah, they came into the division with absolutely no fear. They just thought, we're going to have a go at everybody, and they did. And they get some absolutely fantastic results out of that, really entertaining stuff. And yeah, big credit to them. I think they Macclesfield, I think, were the promoted side that finished highest ultimately, but Merthyr were definitely the entertainers.
Just going to the chat as well, there is a couple of comments on Merthyr. So Chris has put, injuries hit their season and a lovely ground, mental 2 games versus Spennymoor, but a fantastic season for the Welshmen. We also have Luke as well. He's put, fair play to Merthyr, done really well. Shame that they lost out on the playoffs. And also Matt has put about Merthyr, for their first season at the level, along with plenty of travel, you have to say it's been a really good season. Just a shame Robbie Savage snaffled Reese for Forest Green. Yeah, to be fair, between him taking Reese from Merthyr and hijacking a lot of Macclesfield's players, they've done well, haven't they, both teams, considering, definitely. But 7th, we do have Chester. Morgan, I'm going to come to you first on this one. What are your thoughts on Chester's season?
I need to give them a hell of a lot of credit, because at a point in the season, it wasn't just me, we were all being quite negative towards them. They were floating around 14.
Morgan, it was all you.
No.
Anyone else but you?
They were floating around 14th, and we're like, what are a club the size of Chester doing? They're in the playoffs last few years. What are they doing here? What's going wrong? And they had Callum McIntyre, and the fan pushed back on him, was like, cool, we need to move on for him. Then he said he was going to leave at the end of the season. Then he left earlier than that. And then Connor Rawlinson came in and just fully revitalised him. And their second half of the season was absolutely fantastic. That run-in was absolutely fantastic. And obviously, they then lose the playoffs in heartbreaking fashion. That Cheshire derby, losing the 98th minute with that corner that just kind of went through the keeper's hands. Really, really rough way to end your season. But at a point, they shouldn't have been in the playoffs. Like, I know they only finished 7th, and they had a lot to do to, if they were to go up, it would have been 3 away wins. But they were 14th at a point, and we're thinking, you've wasted a season. So I think they deserve a lot of credit for getting there. And then next season, honestly, I think they're one of the favourites just because of their managerial appointment. Phil Parkinson, the job he did at Altrincham was absolutely fantastic. He was there for so long, and he fully built Altrincham from this regional part-time club. By the time he left Altrincham, they're professional, they're in the National League, and they've been holding their own in that league for years, and they're pretty steady. They've been able to develop players like Justin Amaluzor, Alex Newby, Chris Clark, Regan Linney, were all under Phil Parkinson at Altrincham. If he can put in any sort of influence like he did at Altrincham at Chester, they will be absolutely fine, and they will be one of the favourites for the title next year.
Yeah, good shout. Completely agree with that. Dickie, do you have any thoughts on Chester?
Yeah, I mean, I don't, I don't intend any disrespect to anybody in saying this, but I think it got to a point where Chester needed to move on from the Callum McIntyre soap opera. Yeah. It seemed like every couple of weeks, a Saturday evening of bloodletting on social media with people calling for his head and things like that. And they just got themselves into such a cycle of that I think they needed to break free of it. So I thought the decision to say he was going to go, but he was going to go at the end of the season, was a bit weird, because it made me thought, well, look, if they improve, would you not then potentially want him to stay? Then he went early, and I just get the feeling that people just responded to Conal Rawlinson just having a different voice about the place, that all of the soap opera was over, as it were. And also they were sufficiently far behind that there wasn't really a great deal of expectation on them. So I suspect he probably just said, just go out there, and you're not going to go down, lads, so go out there and have a go. And it worked out really, really well for them. Obviously, Motley Henry did really well for them, and Finn Shrimpton. Shrimpton isn't staying because of the change in the training regime that's coming around. It sounds like they're going to be doing some sort of hybrid or extra sessions or things like that, which he can't make fit with his other activities. Motley Henry is going as well. Not a destination not announced, but I believe it may be Macclesfield. So there is a little bit of rebuilding to happen there, but they've already brought in Jacob Hazel, who was at Darlington, obviously, and then went to Boston. And we know what he's about as a player. So yes, I think Chester can look to move on from this kind of cycle that they've been in for the last it wasn't even this season; it was even back into last season as well. But under Phil Parkinson, I think you're spot on. They've appointed a really a manager who knows his stuff, and he doesn't seem to attract that same level of. He's a calmer figure. He's a calmer presence around the place than Callum McIntyre was. Callum McIntyre, lots of fire, lots of energy. I know lots of people respond to that. And when it was going great and he was firing the fans and the players up, we could all tap into that. But when it wasn't going well, it was as bad on the down as it was on the up. I think there'll be a lot steadier and a lot calmer club for having Phil Parkinson there.
You kind of see that as well. And I know it's National League North, but we've been saying all season with our league, haven't we, Morgan? You've got like the big personalities in National League who are obviously fantastic managers in like your Robbie Savage and people like that. But we've said, haven't we, like the more calmer managers like your Jim McNulty and your Stuart Maynard. It's just funny, isn't it, how they've kind of quietly gone along the business despite them doing so well, but they've not necessarily been in the media or spoke about as much as your great personalities. So I think you get that all over, don't you, with that in that kind of aspect?
100%. I mean, it's a 46-game season. It's from August to the end of April. It's a stupidly long season. I don't think you can survive all year being big, loud personality in social media clips. You need to be able to keep a calm head, and it's a full marathon. I struggle with it as a fan, feeling burnt out. I don't know how the players and managers do it, so you can't be too up or too down. You have to be able to stay that level-headedness, and I think Connor Rawlinson did that fantastically there, and I think Phil Parkinson will do the same.
Yeah, definitely. Just on Chester as well from the comments in the chat. Chris has put Chester, roller coaster of a season for the Blue and Whites, but massively improved in the season to finish in the top 7. And this comment from Luke, they are just going to be in that division forever, aren't they? Bless them. Hopefully not. We shall see next season. We do have another team, though, who I think personally have had a fantastic season. 6, we do have Scarborough. I'm going to come to you first on this one, Dickie. How do you think they've done this season?
Fantastically. I'll be honest. I tipped them to go down because I felt with not being able to play at Scarborough and with having to play away from home at Bridlington and how that might affect crowds, things like that. And they'd seem to have hit a little bit of a ceiling in that the same as a lot of clubs that when they got promoted into the division, they're a breath of fresh air. They immediately are pushing for a playoff place and whatever. They'd lost some of that momentum. That had stalled a bit. And then with this stuff around the ground, I thought, I can see problems here. Jonathan Greening and his team have done a fantastic job this season. Bridlington is not the easiest of places to play your football either, in terms of the surroundings. It's not quite what you would have been used to at Scarborough. I know the pitch wasn't fantastic when we went there for the fact that you've got Bridge playing on it as well. But they adapted and they coped. And you get that feeling that if they can come through the season that they've come through and finish in a playoff place, that when the cards do fall their way again, that they've got every reason to be looking upwards. Walker's been a big part of that. I mean, I think it was his first season at the level, having come from Whitby. 19 goals is a terrific return from him. Probably could have done with a few more from others around him potentially as well. They weren't the biggest of scorers, but I think defensively they were pretty good, with Will Thornley, the captain, back there, and Kieran Valegi. So they've done really, really well and made fools of a lot of people, including myself, which I'm quite happy to admit to.
Morgan, do you have anything to say on Scarborough?
Yeah, but none of it's nice. No, they've had a fantastic season.
At least you're honest.
They've had a fantastic season. I wish I could be harsh about them, but I can't. They've had a fantastic season. Considering, they've moved 18 miles to Bridge to play a full season while their pitch was being relayed. They're going to be back there for the 26. They're going to be back home for the 26-27 season. But I think Jonathan Greening and his assistant Michael Ingham, again, both heavy Yorklings, have done a fantastic job there to bring everyone together. I think they got really good performances out of obviously Stephen Walker. Rio Allen had a really good year. Dom Tier, really consistent part of that team as well. So again, I had them to go down, and I wish I was right. I think it'd be even funny if they were in the 7th tier and we were in the 4th. I wish there was 3 leagues between York and Scarborough, but no, they've had a fantastic season. It'll be really interesting to see this summer. I know I said it a few weeks ago, but Harrogate dropping into the National League is going to make that North Yorkshire catchment area in non-league football a really interesting time, because we've gone up and we're not in non-league anymore. We're going to be spending money like no one's business because we know that we can. Harrogate, I don't know what they're going to look like with the whole Weaver family dynamic there, and they're back in non-league football. Scarborough from 6th and feeling quite optimistic. In the 7th tier, you've got Whitby, who aren't afraid to spend some money and have had players like Jacob Hazel come through. So it'll be really interesting to see how that North Yorkshire catchment area works in non-league football, especially when Gateshead, South Shields aren't too far up the road either and spending more. There's going to be a lot of teams in that North Yorkshire, North East area where players are going to be picking and choosing. So the money and everything like that, ambitions, is going to be a really interesting project to see kind of what happens over the summer for Scarborough and the rest of North Yorkshire football.
Just in the comments as well, Chris has had his say. Scarborough, all the stuff with all the off-field issues, wasn't too sure what they would do this season, but they've had a good season. Morgan, I'm going to come to you next on this one. So 5th, we do have Buxton. Do you have any thoughts on Buxton in their season?
Firstly, John McGrath's done a great job, and he just earned that job at Halifax. I think it's Halifax he's gone to. Done a fantastic job there. They've been at the 6th tier for four seasons now. In the two most recent, they've got playoffs, which for a club the size of Buxton, when you look at some of the clubs we've spoken about that have been in the National League for a lot longer, have a bit more pedigree, bigger crowds, everything like this, I think it's really impressive that Buxton have been able to do what they've done. They had 4 players hit double figures in goals this year, and they were the 4th highest scorers in the season. So I think they just deserve a hell of a lot of credit. I think John McGrath's done a great job, and I think it plays quite nicely into kind of Halifax's managerial appointments when they got Adam Lakeland with what he did at Curzon, and now they're doing this. So yeah, I think John McGrath deserves a hell of a lot of credit, and they've done really, really well this year.
Dickie, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, John McGrath did really well at Mikalova, who at step 3 when Telford were there as well. So wasn't surprised when he got the Buxton job. And yeah, he's built on that again. I mean, at one point, they weren't looking great for the playoffs, but they a really strong finish to the campaign the last few weeks of the season. And when they got to those playoffs, I couldn't see Scarborough getting past them, and certainly, and they didn't. I thought Buxton were actually a little bit unfortunate against South Shields as well. I think if they're finishing a bit better on the day, they could have been looking forward to a final against Kidderminster. And then who knows? It's anybody's guess, isn't it? But yeah, I think they've certainly, John McGrath's done really well there. It's a very young team. They are full-time. So perhaps a little bit of a lull in mid-season or a dip is maybe you're not going to have that consistent all the way through the season when you have got a young group. But they got some exciting players in there. Interesting to see whether he actually tries to take any of them to Halifax with them as well, and how that might harm Buxton for next season.
Just in the chat as well, we do have, don't forget Buxton are full-time, so should be in the upper reaches of the league. We've got Graham as well. Buxton had a real spring all season to finish 5th. We've also got as well, Luke, there's a lot of jokes about water in this one. But yes, really good season for them, and they remain still at 5th, Graham. Just going now, 4th place. Dickie, I will come to you first. We do have Macclesfield, despite Robbie Savage absolutely taking a lot of their players, may I add, to be fair to them, throughout the season. They have had a fantastic finish, haven't they? Macclesfield 4th. What's your thoughts on them?
Yeah, it's been a tumultuous season. They've had incredible highs, and just the lowest of lows in that as well, which they had, just before Christmas with the tragic death of Ethan McLeod as well, which, the response to that and the FA Cup performances, and to get into, the playoffs and to do as well as they did, speaks a lot for, John Rooney and his staff and the group that they've got there. I mean, they lost Danny Elliott before the end of the season. He was their top scorer, but he missed the last bit with injury. I think people probably did anticipate that of the promoted sides that they would be the one that would show the best because of the backing that they've got. But then when they lost Robbie Savage and when he took those players with him, I think you're then thinking, oh, I'm not so sure now. And it wasn't a fantastic start for the season for them. But the FA Cup was just, an incredible day. And it didn't harm their league prospects either, as sometimes I was looking at them thinking, when this FA Cup thing ends, how are they going to take to that? Because players can get not used to, but players, you're in a bubble, you're in that centre of attention, you got cameras there all the time, and then when the FA Cup run ends, it's back to the bread and butter now. And I was thinking, how are they going to respond to that? And they responded really, really well. And yeah, I can only see good things for them going forward from here as well. Obviously, the money that they've earned through that cup run this season will further bolster them for what they're going to do. I mean, they were able to do things like when they lost Elliott, they were able to go and bring in, I think it was Gale from Altrincham that they brought in for the last few games of the season as well. So they did have some of that financial backing to be able to go and recruit when they lost people, and they did so, and we saw the benefit of them doing that. Was it a gamble to spend that money? It would probably be more of a gamble to not spend that money and see it fall away. So I think they did really, really well on virtually all fronts this season, and yeah, hats off to them.
Morgan, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think just to be able to combine everything, because we've seen teams do back-to-back promotions from the 7th tier, or at least get into the playoffs. We saw Tamworth go from the 7th tier to the 5th in 2 seasons. We've seen teams be able to bounce really well. So doing that, it's not super rare. We've seen non-league teams do well in the FA Cup and beat Premier League teams. Or we saw Marine play Spurs. That's not super rare. We've seen teams have players like be stripped away and taken with other managers, and you trying to rebuild a court. We've also seen teams who have big crowds and big fan base do well in National League North. To be able to combine all of that, it can be a horrible storm where they did well in the FA Cup and the league form stayed with it. They had games in hand because of all these cup games they played. They survived their core being ripped out by Robbie Savage taking so many players like Trey Pemberton. Damani Mellor moved partway through the season from Macclesfield. It wasn't just this summer move. It was like Pemberton. They lost players throughout the season like Damani Mellor, who went later in the year. It could have been a massive recipe for disaster with the change of manager and everything else, and games in hand. It could have completely fallen apart. We could be speaking about them finishing 8th, 9th, 10th, and they'd missed the playoffs. Instead, they held it all together really, really impressively, held their nerve. And when there's big expectations from a big crowd of where Macclesfield, we should be in the Football League, obviously they had the ownership issues, they had to restart, but there will be some expectations from the Macclesfield fans of we don't belong in the 6th tier. So I think everyone involved there, John Rooney, the players, everyone that stayed, deserves a hell of a lot of credit for being able to kind of say they grit their teeth and they got through what could have been a really tough period. And they obviously then they earned themselves that Cheshire derby in the playoffs, and they won it in the best way with a 90th minute goal or 98th minute goal. So I think everyone at Macclesfield deserves a hell of a lot of credit this year.
Yeah, definitely. There is a lot of Macclesfield chat in here, so I will read them out. So Chris has put, Mac, what a great season it has been for the Silkmen. The Robbie Savage effect hasn't stopped them. Also, beating Palace got them big attention and money. That is so true. Graham does like to mention it because obviously he's a Charlton fan. He hates Crystal Palace, so he does like to bring it up when he can. Macclesfield, I remember they had a good cut round result, didn't they? Yes, they did. Yes, they did. Lucas put, I'd do anything for Danny Elliott to be back at Gateshead. And we also have Matt too. He has put, I think Mac will fancy their chances of promotion next season. Won't be easy though, especially given the new teams coming into the league. That is right. But yeah, I think they'll have a fair shot at it, if I'm being quite honest. But we shall see. Third, Kidderminster Harriers. So I'm going to come to you first, Morgan. Obviously, they have been promoted through the playoffs. What's your thoughts on Kidderminster?
Adam Murray, shout out to him because he obviously, I know we spoke about Eastbourne obviously a lot on the like normal Monday night show. We're talking about National League South as well. Obviously, last year finished third with Eastbourne, so close to getting them into the National League. To then be able to go and redo it all over again with Kidderminster is really, really impressive. And obviously, with how they did it through the playoffs, it's never easy. That South Shields final, they weren't favourites for that, having to go away to one of the top scorers in the league, with players like Paul Blackett, who can make it really difficult. Christian Dibble, I know I spoke about him in the final, was fantastic. And you look at their top goal scorer only getting 10, but they conceded 20 goals at home all year in 23 games. Like, at home, great defensive record, that. It'll be really interesting to see how they do next year, because the last time they were in the National League, they came up and went straight back down again. And that was only 2-3 years ago. So I'll be really interested to see if they're able to come up and stay in the National League, or whether it's a case of they're going to come up and go straight back down again because they can't quite handle it.
Yeah, Kidderminster are an interesting one for me because we're a little bit closer to them geographically, and didn't start great for them under Adam Murray. There were fans weren't having Adam Murray. October, November time, didn't think he was right man for the job. And Kidderminster is another one of those clubs, and goodness me, there's several of them, aren't there, where there are high expectations that they expect not just to be up there, but they expect them to be playing a good quality of football at the same time. And I have to say, I don't know whether it was just in terms of showing patience or in terms of sort of like backing him financially, but I think Adam Murray was given, he wasn't given the vote of confidence by Richard Lane, but he was given that ability to make changes when it was evident that the recruitment he made in the summer wasn't good enough. So he had a second stab at it mid-season, and second time around he got it right. And they were a lot better from then on. I mean, still a little bit short of goals. I mean, Reynolds isn't their own player. He was on loan to them from Notts County. I'm sure they would be interested in taking him again next season if they could get him. Obviously now Adam Murray having stepped down to take the Barrow job is an interesting dynamic, but there isn't anybody in the Kidderminster role at the moment. I'm hearing Matt Sadler, the former Walsall manager, being mentioned in connection with that one. But there is some recruitment that needs to be done there, because they had several of those players that helped them get up were loan players, and they've got one or two who are probably maybe not quite at the level for step one anymore. So it's going to be interesting. Charlie Cooper was a really, really good addition for them. I saw him on loan at Hereford from Yeovil. He obviously decided to get out of Yeovil when Yeovil sacked his father, and then he had a month at Hereford, went back to Yeovil, was immediately loaned back out to Kidderminster, and he's had a big impact for them there. I think David Davis, the former Wolves midfielder in the midfield, he's been huge for them as well as a captain. So there is a bit of work to do for them there, absolutely. But I have to admit, I fancied them for the playoffs, and I did fancy them to beat South Shields in the final, just because I'd seen them over the last few weeks of the season, and they just seemed to be more together than South Shields were coming down the final stretch.
Just quickly in the chat as well, we do have Chris. His thoughts on Kidderminster: outstanding season and playoff winners. Hopefully they don't do a Charlie again. Then Murray leaving for Barrow after a clause in his contract was triggered. I find that really strange, that, to be fair, just to leave him for Barrow, because I know Barrow have just been relegated to the National League. But I just feel like there's a lot going on behind the scenes at Barrow at the minute. So it does baffle me a little bit. I know it is a step, maybe a step up, but in the same aspect, I just feel like there's too much going on at Barrow. And like in the chat as well, I know people are making jokes, but there is some managers in that Barrow. Obviously for Barrow last season, they did last 5 games and maybe even less. There's no consistency whatsoever at the moment in Barrow. So we'll see what happens with obviously Adam Murray. But I guess if anyone is going to do well at Barrow, it's surely going to be him, because he does a job, doesn't he, if wherever he goes, to be fair to him.
He does, yeah, and he was assistant to Paul Cox when Paul Cox was the manager at Barrow, which may have been part of the attraction as well. I can certainly see what would attract Barrow about Adam Murray.
Yeah.
Looking at the second half of the season, I think if they'd looked at Adam Murray's first half of the season at Kidderminster, maybe not so sure then. So it's a strange marriage, this one, I have to say. And look, eventually in football, all managers get the sack at some point, don't they? So I'm not saying I think that's going to happen to Adam Murray, but it just strikes me as a strange appointment. And of course, it will give Kidderminster that additional motivation to want to finish higher than Barrow, just for show that, that we're fine without you.
100%. Just quickly go into the chat as well. We do have Fats in, so hi Fats, hope you're okay. And yes, we are all very well, thank you. Thank you so much for coming in and supporting. Right, second place. I mean, imagine being South Shields, having the season that they have had and still not going up to the National League. I'm going to come to you first, Dickie. Thoughts on South Shields? It must be heartbreaking for them.
Oh, absolutely. That for if you look across the whole season and look at the points total they got and the goals they scored and how few they conceded and look at certainly how they played over the first half to 2/3 of the season, then absolutely they should feel disappointed. And I could almost feel a little bit bitter about the fact that they haven't gone up. They did tail off towards the end. I think that's undeniable. Don't know whether Ian Watson's fallout with Scott was a factor in that, because that took a little bit of scoring power away for them. Obviously, Blackett got 29, which is a fantastic return. But I suppose maybe this is where the younger players in the team maybe lacked that little bit of experience to get it over the line. They played some fantastic football at times, possession football of the sort that we'd seen, Gateshead play previously, and Ian Watson, of course, had been at Gateshead, and it was a similar sort of style. But perhaps when they needed to change their approach and just get results, that proved a little bit harder for them. And I mentioned Kidderminster and why I fancied Kidderminster to win that promotion final, and it was exactly for that reason, because I just felt that Kidderminster might be able to change their style and just do what was necessary, rather than. I'm not saying that South Shields didn't have a plan B, but that it was, by the end of the season, everybody knew how they went about how they played, and Kidderminster had worked on a way to stop them. And it's just really unfortunate. And now they've got to pick it up and go again next season, which is going to won't be easy. But again, they are a full-time side. They've got some, decent levels of investment going in there as well. So I think they'll be up there again. And you just hope that, for their sake, that they've drawn all the learning they can from, the bitter way that the season has ended for them, and can use it to their advantage next year.
Morgan, do you have anything to say on South Shields?
Yeah, I think they've had a great season. 99 goals, second top scorers, second in the league, 95 points. I think there's a lot good that happened there. They lost the fewest amount of games, only losing 7 all season. There's a lot of positives to take from this year, but they've thrown a lot of money at it. There are ownership issues. They've thrown a lot of money at it. They fell short. Manager fell out with Kedwin Scott, who's obviously a very talented player. So a lot went right, but there are a few question marks in terms of what went wrong and what's going to happen for the 26-27 season. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what their summer looks like, especially if, Kedwin Scott's likely to leave if he's fallen out with the manager. If Paul Blackett goes elsewhere as well. If, Gateshead with their rebuild under Rob Elliott, then go get Paul Blackett, because it's obviously very local geographically. It'll be really interesting to see kind of who they're able to keep hold of and who they're not, and kind of then what the summer looks like and what they can do for next season.
I thought in that playoff final they really missed Will Jenkins. When I saw him earlier in the season, he really pulled the strings for them, and he was a big loss. And of course, after the season they've had, you'll have players, or you'll have other teams coveting those players from Shields now. So it'll be interesting to see who they start the season with, whether they can resist any of those offers.
Definitely. In the chat really made me laugh, because obviously you've got Luke, who's a Gateshead fan, and you've got Chris, who's a Spennymoor fan. So Graham has put in, I've got the popcorn ready for Chris and Luke's comments here. So then, starting the comments, we have Luke, and he's just put, boo. And then, just elaborating on it, he's just put, just want to remind you guys that Gateshead are the only club in Tyne, and we're in the National League. That's what he's put. And then Chris has also put, Shields, all the money they've spent, and with the top goal scorer in Blackett, they've massively screwed it up hugely and bottled it in the playoff final. That's words from their rivals. But there's only one team we do have to speak about now. It is the champions. So champions and top of the National League North, going into the National League, AFC Fylde. Morgan, I'm going to come to you first on AFC Fylde. What are your thoughts on them?
Really impressive season. I mean, they got relegated last year without really much of a fight. They went down with a bit of a whimper, and then Nick Horton inevitably left. He'd been there for ages, was by far the best player. He left and went to Forest Green, and they didn't miss him at all. I think their recruitment is fantastic to get Luca Thomas and Danny Ormerod there. Luca Thomas is far too good for the National League North, and he showed it all year. He was fantastic. Danny Ormerod, also a very, very talented player. His goal that's also in the goal of the season candidates from the halfway line, fantastic goal. I think it was him that scored it anyway. Fantastic goal. And they earned it. They were able to grit their teeth. And I know we spoke about South Shields not having kind of what it takes to win when it matters late on in the season. They did. They held the nerve and they got it done. Yeah. Craig Mahon, again, fantastic job he's done there from where he's come from, at being at Curzon and some other, or he's at Curzon, which don't have the same resources filed to then take that step up and get them promoted into the National League. Really impressive job. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of summer they have, see if they can come up and actually survive in the National League rather than going up and going straight back down. They're always going to struggle a little bit because their fan base isn't the biggest, and everyone knows their owner's a bit weird. And he said they're going to be in the EFL by 2022, which obviously they're now 4 years past and they've still not made it. So it's going to be a weird one, because when you get into the National League and you've got their expectations are going to shift, because they go from big fish in small pond in the National League North to then much bigger pond in the National League when you're going to be against these Carlisles and Southends and clubs like that. It's how do they adjust to that while also knowing there's going to be more eyes on them and more people mocking them for every time they lose because their owners said they're going to be in the playoff, going to be in the EFL 4 years ago.
Yeah, I always feel a little bit sorry for AFC Fylde, because I know their owner attracts a lot of attention, and I think sometimes that can almost kind of make it harder, because I always get the feeling Fylde are a side that lots of other teams like to beat, and lots of other supporters like to beat, but they cope with that fantastically well this year. I think Craig Mahon did a really, really great job with them, and yes, they've got Thomas and Ormerod you've spoken about there, but I think the supporting cast they have for them, there's a phrase on there, no stars, just talent. I think that kind of applies to Fylde this year. Yes, Ormerod came through and he's obviously a star in the making, but I think the main thing that I've taken from Fylde all through the season is that they weren't reliant on Nick Horton the way that, in previous seasons, it was the Nick Horton show. Before Nick Horton, it was the Danny Rowe show. They've moved away from that sort of like star vehicle and star player thing. And yes, I know Ormerod's kind of moved into that role, but he wasn't signed to be that player. He's just emerged. And I think, they've just seemed to have been, again, I think the experience of those players that they've got in that group ultimately is what got them over the line. I mean, they weren't without a few little jitters themselves. I mean, they and South Shields did swap over, the first and second position a few times going down the final few weeks of the season. But ultimately, Fylde had it when it counted. And I think it was those players who'd just been around a little bit more, but obviously weren't at Fylde just for the money, and obviously were there because they want to win. And then, when you've got a goal scorer like Olmrod popping in the goals like he does, and when you've got Thomas probably contributing, I don't know, he probably got the best part of 20, didn't he? Something like that. It's a pretty hard. It's a really good mix, and they've proven just too hard to stop for everybody. Look, 3 losses at home, 7 away. Not many draws in there either as well. It was, you can go 10 losses for a team that went up, but then there's only 4 draws in there. So that's like 32 victories. I mean, that seems to, they've got a lot of goals scoring in them. We know scoring over 100 for the season. I think they'll be better in the National League for having dropped down and rebuilt than if they'd stayed up in the National League by the skin of their teeth. I think it's given them the chance to reassess, new manager, new outlook. I think they'll be a better team next season.
Definitely, I completely agree with that. There's a lot of mixed thoughts on this, by the way, in the chat. So we do have from Chris, bloody hell, very impressive. Did the 5-0 double over Spennymoor. Thank goodness they've gone up, so we can't get those results again. And we have Luke, we have an awful record against Fylde. Not looking forward to playing them next season. And then we have Matt as well. He has put, I have a strong dislike for Fylde, a horrible owner, a history of arrogance in seeing the EFL as their birthright, and a club run on hugely unsustainable financial grounds. Not much to like. So we do have a mixed bag when it does come to AFC Fylde, but we all cannot deny the fantastic season that they have had. They are going to the National League alongside Kidderminster, so we will see how that pans out next season. But that is season review done for National League North. So thank you so much, guys, for coming on and spending your evening with me. As always, this is in collaboration with the fantastic NLFullTime. Thank you so much, Dickie, for representing NLFullTime. Where can everybody find yourself on the socials, but also the podcast as well?
Twitter handle on there. Instagram's the same thing. Don't do an awful lot on there. You'll find me on NLFullTime. I do quite a lot of the output for AFC Telford. And I commentate for BBC Radio Shropshire. So you won't hear my voice on the airwaves until August. But looking forward to being back doing that again.
And Morgan, thank you so much for this evening. Like I said, there was a lot of people in the group who did shy away from the National League North. I am going to out them now. A couple of them did have plans. So for the ones who had plans, I completely understand. But the ones who shied away, we see ya. We see ya. I won't out your names on here, though, but But Morgan, thank you so much for giving up your time as well. Where can everybody find you on the socials, and obviously some of your work that you do as well?
No worries. I've really enjoyed it. I mean, the National League North's always a bit of a roller coaster fun league to cover. So really fun one to talk about. On Twitter @Morgan_Bruce, talking about how Ollie Pearce is going to stay this summer, and you can all keep your hands off him.
Well, I've just actually gone on and
Peter O'Rourke.
I've got Peter linked to Bromley. That's the first thing I saw, and below that was Oldham are the favourites to sign Gus Scott Morris. I'm thinking, no. But yes, we shall see how that pans out. And of course, obviously, next week it will be our National League season review. So we will be talking a lot about Ollie Pearce, I'm sure. But if anybody does want to follow me, I am Charxrafc. That is on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. And our new social slide. So if it does work, is it going to work? Yes, it's going to work. So we do have 4 live shows a week on the Absolute Football podcast. As I have mentioned, on a Monday, in collaboration with the fantastic NLFullTime, it is our absolutely non-league show. We cover National League North, National League South, and our last season review is this time next week, 8:30, and all things National League. So me and Morgan are very excited to talk about that one, aren't we, Morgan?
Oh, absolutely. You can just talk York for 2 hours.
We're hoping none of them turn up again so we can make it the Awesome Watch show. But I think there's going to be a few more on next week. Of course, tomorrow, Tuesday, is all things Premier League. Sam, I don't know who else is on with Sam, probably Grimmett, and I think Heather are on, and they're talking all things what happened in that final day in the Premier League. We've got Heather as well, the Bournemouth fan. She has secured a place in Europe. Brighton have secured a place in Europe, and Sunderland as well. So, yeah, that's really good. There'll be a happy Sam and a happy Grimmy as well, seeing as though Manchester United have finished in third place. And obviously they will be talking, I'm sure, about Michael Carrick and him becoming the full-time manager, and also Arsenal as well. They did win, and that relegation battle between Spurs and West Ham. Unlucky for West Ham, but I'm sure there's a few happy and relieved Spurs fans who will join that chat. So definitely go and check that out. All things women's football on Wednesday. Freya, Paul, and the rest of Team Chaos, they talk everything women's football, and I'm pretty sure they are talking about the Champions League, if I have it right, this week. But yeah, go and watch that because it's always a great laugh as well as a fantastic knowledge when it comes to women's football. And I am back on Thursday talking all things EFL. We will be reviewing the playoffs. We do finally have our playoff winners. So Hull City, Bolton Wanderers, and then obviously today it was Notts County. They have obviously been promoted now. So we will be talking all of that. And then from the week after, it will be covering the season reviews from the Championship, League One and League Two. But as always, thank you so much to each and every person in the chat. We really do appreciate it. But yes, thank you. Hope you all have a fantastic week. I hope you all don't melt in the sunshine. But if you do, if you need something to watch, go and watch Sam tomorrow on Absolutely Premier League. Bye, everyone.